Hello, everyone. I'm going to be reading another chapter from The Great Brain, Chapter 2. Hope you enjoyed the first chapter. Uh, we were introduced to Tom, the Great Brain, and his younger brother John, who's telling the story. They have an older brother, Swain. Of course, they live with their mom and dad, and an aunt who's not really their aunt, but she's around all the time, so they call her aunt. So this story is set in the late 1800s in a little town in Utah. The Fitzgeralds are a Catholic family living in predominantly Mormon Utah, and these are true characters based on the memories of John Fitzgerald. Chapter 2 is called Revenge Can Be Sour. Miss Thatcher, who had been ill with a very bad cold, was well enough to start teaching again on the following Monday. If she had been younger, she might have recovered sooner. But Miss Thatcher was getting along in years, and we kids had heard talk that she might be replaced in the fall. Swain, Tom, and I were back in school just 1 week when school stopped again for all of us because of Mama's system with childhood diseases. Swain, being the oldest, usually caught a childhood disease first. Tom caught the diseases Swain missed, and that made me the victim of Mama's system every time because Mama believed in getting us all infected with the disease at the same time and getting it over with. I had a feeling Friday evening during supper that I was about to become the victim again. Mama looked across the table at Swain. "Your eyes hurt, Swain D?" she asked. "A little," Swain admitted. The next morning, Mama took one look at Swain and ordered him to go get undressed and go to her bedroom on the ground floor. Whenever we boys were sick, she always put us in her bedroom. That was the first part of her system. Then she telephoned Dr. Leroy. Mama's bedroom had a door that adjoined the bathroom. When the doctor arrived, Tom and I sneaked into the bathroom. Tom's great brain had long ago figured out a way to eavesdrop. He put a water glass against the door leading to Mama's bedroom and to his ear. There's a picture. Tom and John listening through the door. I watched his face as he listened. I knew the news was going to be bad as the expression on his face changed from curiosity to dejection. "SD has got the measles," he said sadly as he stepped back from the door. "You know what that means, JD." You remember the boys call themselves by their initials, and they all have the same middle initial. "Maybe we can sneak out and play before Mama puts us to bed," I suggested. Mama must have guessed what I had in my mind because she opened the door leading to her bathroom. She caught Tom red-handed with the water glass in his hand. "I suspected as much," she said. "You boys know what to do." Tom shook his head slowly. "Seems silly for JD and me to get the measles just because Swain got them," he said. "Maybe JD and I are immune to the measles." "If you're immune," Mama said, "we'll soon find out." "But Mama," I protested, "I never get a chance to catch a disease first. Swain will be all well just when Tom and I are getting sick. And when Tom catches a disease first, he's all well just when Swain and I are getting sick. It ain't fair, Mama." "Isn't fair," Mama said. "I don't want to hear another word." There was nothing to do but obey. Tom and I went upstairs to the bedroom we shared. We undressed and put on our nightshirts and bathrobes. We dutifully marched down to Mama's bedroom. Mama and Aunt Bertha had hung blankets over the windows to make the room dark. The room had to be dark when you had the measles because the light hurt your eyes. Tom and I groped our way to bed and crawled in with Swain. We had to stay in bed with Swain until we were both good and infected with measles. Today they just give you a shot, but it's old-fashioned doctoring, I guess. Later, when Dr. Leroy came to the house and pronounced Mom and me good and infected by Swain, Mama let us move back to our bedroom. Sure enough, just like always, as Swain was getting better, Tom and I started getting watery eyes, runny noses, and fevers. Swain moved upstairs to his bedroom while Tom and I moved down to Mama's bedroom. The next morning, Swain came into Mama's bedroom right after breakfast to rub salt on our wounds as he always did when he got the disease first. "Good morning," he said so cheerfully I would have thrown a pillow at him if I could have seen him in the darkened room. "How are all my little measles patients today?" he asked. "Beat it," Tom said. "I was just about to do that very thing," Swain said. "While you two are lying here moaning and groaning with pain, I'll be outside playing and having fun." "You You can't do that, Tom said. We're quarantined. True, Swain admitted. But it so happens my good friend Jerry Mason has had the German measles, and Dr. Leroy and Mama said he could come here to play. Why don't you really rub it in and tell J.D. that you'll celebrate his birthday for him? Tom said with sarcasm. That's right, Swain said, as if the idea pleased him. Can you imagine J.D. celebrating his birthday in bed with the measles? What a way to spend a birthday. I was so sick I'd forgotten about my birthday. Spending my birthday in bed with the measles wasn't bothering me because I knew Mama would give me a delayed birthday party when I was well. What was bothering me was knowing I would never be the first to catch a disease. I would never be the one to be all well just as Tom and Swain were getting sick. I would never know the joy of coming into Mama's bedroom and rubbing salt in the wounds the way they did to me. Every day, Swain came into the bedroom to tell us all the good things he'd had to eat that day, while Tom and I had to just eat mush and soup. Every day, Swain rubbed it in by telling us what he and Jerry Mason planned to do that day while we lay sick in bed. Tom and I finally got over the measles. The quarantine sign on our house came down, and we 3 boys went back to school. Mama gave me a delayed birthday party on a Saturday afternoon. All my friends came over to the party. We played heavy hangs over my poor head, button, who has the button, hide the thimble, pin the tail on the donkey, and other wonderful games. All my friends gave me presents, but the best present of all was the genuine Indian beaded belt my Uncle Mark gave me. Uncle Mark was the town marshal and a deputy sheriff. He was married to Papa's sister, my Aunt Kathy. Tom was bug-eyed when he saw the belt. He tried to trade me out of it, and he tried to swindle me out of it, but I was too smart for him. I was the only kid in town with a genuine Indian beaded belt, and I wasn't about to let go of it for anything. On Wednesday of the following week, I missed my friend Howard K. at school. Swain, Tom, and I had been staying after school every afternoon to make up for the days we'd lost. When Miss Thatcher finally let us go, I ran all the way to the K home. There was a yellow quarantine sign on the house. I knew from the color of the sign that Howard must have the mumps. Wasn't this just my luck? Why couldn't Howard have had his mumps while I was having the measles? That night, as Tom and I undressed for bed, I hung my Indian belt on the bedstead. It's a beauty, Tom said, eyeing the belt. There must be something you'd want more than that belt, J.D. Nothing you've got, I said, thinking about Howard and his mumps. There is something, Tom said eagerly. You name it, and we can make a deal. The mumps, I said, only I have to get 'em first. You must be crazy, Tom said. I could tell you how to get the mumps first, but knowing Mama's system, I'd have to get 'em too. The belt isn't worth it. I lay awake putting my little brain to work. If Tom knew how I could get the mumps first, there must be a way. I thought and I thought and I thought about it. When Swain or Tom got a disease, Mama made sure I caught it by putting me into bed with them. That's why they were quarantined people. That was why they quarantined people who had contagious diseases, so they couldn't give the disease to anybody else. Now, if there was just some way for me to sneak into Howard K.'s house and get him to infect me with the mumps, I'd have the last laugh on Tom and Swain. My little brain had done it. I felt like jumping out of bed and dancing around the room. I found that sneaking into Howard's house wasn't going to be easy. I decided it would have to be on a Saturday because there just wasn't time after school with Miss Thatcher keeping me and my brothers in to make up work we'd lost. Saturday morning, after filling up the wood boxes and coal buckets in the kitchen and parlor and helping Tom and Swain feed and water the chickens, our team of horses, the milk cow, and Swain's Mustang pony, I climbed to the top of our barn. I could see over the Olson's backyard. I could also see the back porch of Howard's house. I thought Mrs. K would never come out of her house, but she finally did. She had on a big sunbonnet and carried some packages of seeds in her hands. She headed straight for her vegetable garden. I climbed down from the barn. I walked boldly down Main Street, past the K home, and around into an alley. I cut through the Smith's orchard, pretending I was taking a shortcut. In the middle of the orchard, I dropped to my knees. I kept out of sight on my hands and knees until I'd crawled to the Smith's backyard. I couldn't see anybody on the Smith's back porch. I crawled along a hedge separating the Smith's place from the K's place. If anyone saw me, I could pretend I'd come over to play with Seth Smith. But nobody saw me. I came to an opening in the hedge, which Howard, Seth, and I used when playing Indian Scout. I squeezed through the opening and ran to the side porch of the K house. I went upstairs to Howard's room. It was empty. I peeked out the upstairs window. Mrs. K was bent over her vegetable garden planting seeds. I went downstairs where I knew there were 2 bedrooms. I heard Howard coughing in his mother's bedroom. I almost burst out laughing when I opened the door and saw Howard. His cheeks and jaws were all puffed up like a balloon with funny face painted on it. "You can't come in here," Howard whispered. I walked over to the bed. I bent over and put my face close to his face. "Breathe on me and infect me with the mumps," I said. "Have you gone loco?" he asked. "The mumps hurt like the devil. It even hurts to talk." "If you're a true pal, you'll infect me with the mumps," I pleaded. "It's the only way I can get even with Tom and Swain. One of them always gets a disease first. That means they're the ones all over it just when I'm getting sick. I want to be the first one to get well just once so I can rub it in good the way they do to me." "All right," Howard said, "but I still think you're loco wanting to catch the mumps." Howard proved to be a true pal. He put his face close to mine and breathed into it as I inhaled. We were doing just great with me getting infected when we heard the screen door on the back porch slam. "Now we're in for it," Howard whispered as he looked wildly around the room. "Quick, hide under the bed." I dived under the bed just in time. I could see Mrs. K's shoes and ankles as she came in the room. "Are you all right, dear?" she asked. "I'm fine, Mom," Howard answered. "I just want to finish planting the radishes," his mother said. "I won't be long." Mrs. K left the room. I crawled out from under the bed, sat down on the edge of the bed, and put my face close to Howard's. He breathed into my face with me inhaling until we decided I was good and infected. "You're a real pal," I said. "If you say so, John," Howard said as if he doubted it. I couldn't help feeling proud of myself as I made my way home the same way I'd come. This was one time when I was surely going to get a disease first. And just when I was getting over the mumps, Tom and Swain would be coming down with them. I could picture my brothers lying in bed with their cheeks and jaws all swollen and suffering after I was all better. Boy, was I going to get even. I looked in the mirror every morning to see if there was any swelling in my jaws. Nothing happened. I'd never felt so let down in my life. With the coming of Friday morning and still no sign of the mumps, I came to the conclusion that I hadn't been infected enough. The next morning, I did my chores in a jig time and climbed on top of the barn. I could see Mrs. K leaning over the backyard fence talking to Mrs. Smith next door. Mama had once said that Mrs. Smith could outtalk any 4 women in town. If Mama was right, and I'd never known her to be wrong, Mrs. K would be there a long time. I climbed down from the roof of the barn and ran all the way to the Smith home. I boldly walked into the front yard, hoping Seth wasn't home. If he was, I'd just pretend I came over to play with him. Luck was with me. I made my way to the hole in the hedge without anybody seeing me. In another minute, I was in the bedroom with Howard. "Gosh, John, what are you doing here?" he exclaimed. "I didn't catch him," I said. "Maybe you didn't infect me enough." "It ain't time yet," Howard said. "Dr. Leroy said it takes from 12 days to 3 weeks after being exposed." "Exposed?" I asked, wondering if I'd missed something. "It's the same as infected," Howard explained. "As long as I'm here," I said, "we might as well make sure I'm exposed plenty." Howard obliged like a true pal. He even suggested it might be a good idea to cough in my face a few times, although it hurt him like the devil to cough. Never did a boy have such a true friend. Howard breathed in my face and coughed in my face until we were positive I was exposed for sure. I was the saddest kid in town when 14 days had passed since my first visit to Howard without me coming down with the mumps. A horrible thought came to me. Maybe I was one of those unfortunate kids who was immune to the mumps. I decided to find out by asking Mama to look at my throat. She was in the kitchen with Aunt Bertha. They were making pies. "Mama, will you look at my throat?" I asked. She wiped flour from her hands onto her apron. There was concern in her hazel eyes as she placed a hand on my forehead. "Don't you feel well, John D.?" she asked. "That's the trouble," I said with disgust. "I feel fine. Why do you want me to look at your throat? She asked. I almost tipped the beans, but caught myself in time. It tickles, I said. Mama looked at my throat. She assured me there was nothing the matter with it. Little did she know how cruel her words were breaking my heart. 3 days later, when I got up to get washed and dressed and have breakfast before going to school, my throat really did tickle and feel sore. I didn't pay any attention to it because I was now convinced I was immune to the mumps. During supper that evening, Mama kept looking at me across the table. Does it hurt you to chew, John D.? She asked. Hurts my jaws a little, I answered. Then it hit me what this meant. Let me have a look at you, Mama said. I got up and walked around the table, feeling 10 feet tall. Maybe I wasn't immune to the mumps after all. Mama pressed her fingers to my throat. Does that hurt? It hurts, I said happily. I'd never known what joy there was to pain until that moment. There seems to be some swelling, Mama said. Are you sure, Mama? I asked gleefully as I flashed Swain and Tom a triumphant grin. I don't know why it pleases you so, Mama said. I think you're coming down with the mumps. Finish eating your supper and go to bed. I'll have Dr. Leroy come to give a look at you. Hooray! I couldn't help shouting as I did a little jig around the table back to my place. Papa stared at me. Better get him to bed immediately, he said to Mama. That boy's got such a fever he doesn't know what he's doing. I was all undressed and in bed in the upstairs bedroom I shared with Tom when Dr. Leroy came into the room followed by Mama. He pressed his fingers against my throat. He made me open my mouth while he looked at my throat. He took my temperature. It's the mumps, all right, he said to Mama. Never in my life had I heard such wonderful news. I had a hard time staying in bed until they left the room. Then I got up and was doing a happy jig when Swain and Tom entered. Swain grabbed me and threw me onto the bed. Papa was right, he said to Tom. Old J.D. has gone crazy with the fever. Ha, 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 I laughed, although it hurt my jaws to laugh. I got them first. Let him go, Tom said to Swain. J.D. hasn't got a fever. He's got the mumps on purpose. Swain let me go and stood up. Then he must be crazy, he said. Crazy like a fox, I said, sitting on the edge of the bed and grinning triumphantly at my brothers. Maybe I've only got a little brain, but I figured out how to get a disease first for a change. I sneaked into Howard K's house while he had the mumps and got him to expose me. Swain was so angry that he grabbed my shoulders and began shaking me. Mean to tell me you deliberately got the mumps just so you could give them to me and TD? You guessed it, I said, and couldn't help gloating. It'll take 2 to 3 weeks under Mama's system for you and TD to get them. By then, I'll be all well. I'll be the one who rubs it in. I'll be the one who's out playing while you two are lying in bed, groaning in pain. I didn't mind telling them because I knew my brothers were not tattletales. They made no protest when Mama moved me down to her bedroom and made both of them get into bed with me to get infected. They did torture me with the mumps. They did torture me when the mumps got so bad I could only swallow mush and soup. They would come into the room chewing on a drumstick or eating a piece of cake or pie, smack their lips as they told me how good it tasted. They spent a fortune on candy just to eat it in front of me, knowing with the mumps I couldn't take a bite of candy because of the pain in chewing. Finally, I could stand it no longer. I protested against this barbaric torture to Mama. I think your brothers have every right to tease you this way, Mama said. Tease me, I cried out. It's worse than Indian torture. Then bear it like an Indian, Mama said. I was a bit suspicious when you seemed so happy to get the mumps. I put 2 and 2 together and had a talk with Mrs. K. She, in turn, had a talk with her son, Howard. I think you deserve the punishment your brothers are giving you. I was positive I would starve to death or go out of my mind as Swain and Tom continued to torture me. But I made it. My day of glory finally arrived. I was all well while Tom and Swain lay groaning in pain in Mama's bedroom with their cheeks and jaws swelled up like they had 2 baseballs in their mouths. Mama made fresh bread that day. If there was anything my 2 brothers liked the most, it was to take the heel of a fresh baked loaf of bread, smother it with butter and sugar, and then put it in the oven until the sugar turned brown. It was better than candy. I entered the bedroom with a heel of bread covered with butter and toasted sugar. Here's a picture of him coming in. I thought I'd have a little snack before going out to play, I said, as I waved the heel of bread back and forth so they could smell it. Then I took a bite of it. Boy, is this delicious. Don't you wish you could have a bite? They were so jealous, neither one of them said anything as I ate the heel, and they watched me with their mouths watering. Then I pulled out a stick of red licorice. I took a bite out of it. "I'd offer you fellas a bite, but I don't think you can chew anything," I said. "Guess I'll have to eat it all by myself." Then I really rubbed it in. "I'll be thinking of you fellas during supper tonight," I said. "Mama's having fried chicken, and I know how you both love fried chicken. And while you're only having a cup of soup to eat, I'll be stuffing myself with good old fried chicken and a piece of Aunt Bertha's delicious apple pie." "Beat it," Swain said, unable to endure the torture any longer. "Soon as I finish my licorice," I said, taking another bite of it. "Then I'm going outside to play. You'll hear me whistling and shouting happily as I play outside the bedroom window, so you can hear while you two lie here groaning and moaning." Tom suddenly sat up in bed. "I got news for you, J.D., he said, making a face because it hurt his throat to talk. "Beginning right now, S.D. and I are going to give you the silent treatment. And because of the dirty trick you played on us, we're going to give you the silent treatment for a whole month after we're well." He looked at Swain, who nodded. "These are the last words you'll hear from me or S.D. until a month after we're well." The silent treatment. I hadn't thought about that. Papa and Mama had a system for punishing us boys when we did something wrong. They never gave us a whipping like other kids got from their parents. When they wanted to punish us, they both just stopped speaking to us. Sometimes the silent treatment lasted only one day. Sometimes it would last a whole week. It was 10 times worse than getting a whipping. They would both pretend we didn't even exist, even while eating. If I asked Mama or Papa to pass the butter, they would pretend they didn't hear me, and Tom or Swain or Aunt Bertha would have to pass it to me. I soon discovered that the silent treatment by Papa and Mama was mild compared to the silent treatment by Tom and Swain. They took all the joy out of me being able to rub it in about them being sick and me being well. When I went into their bedroom, they both just turned over on their stomachs and ignored me. I also discovered that there was no joy in being able to play without Tom. It was as if I'd lost the one thing that made playing fun. My revenge had turned sour. My life was lonely and miserable during the days Tom and Swain were confined to bed with the mumps. I cried myself to sleep at night after praying to God to never let my little brain be foolish like this anymore. Little did I know the worst was yet to come. When Tom and Swain were well enough to be up and around, they both continued to give me the silent treatment. Tom refused to speak to me or play with me. So did Swain. I went 3 days of torture before Tom relented one night as we undressed for bed. "That was a dirty trick you pulled on S.D. and me," he said as he pulled off his pants. "Do you admit it was a dirty trick?" "Yes," I answered. "Just having him speak to me, even this way, made me feel better." "And do you admit that you should be punished for it?" Tom asked. "Yes, but not too much punishment," I cried. "I'll go crazy if you and S.D. give me the silent treatment for a whole month." "There are 2 ways to punish you," Tom said as he folded his pants and put them on the chair. "Giving you the silent treatment for a month is one." "I'll die if you do," I said. Then I took hope. "You said there are 2 ways. What's the other way?" "The other way would be to make you give up something that you want to keep," he said. "If you agreed to give up something you really like, I would get S.D. to call off the silent treatment with me." "I'll give you everything I've got," I said happily. "Even the Indian beaded belt Uncle Mark gave you for your birthday?" Tom asked. The belt was the envy of every kid in town. It was a stiff price to pay. I hesitated. "Forget it, J.D., Tom said. "These are the last words I'll speak to you for a whole month." I hesitated no longer. "You can have the belt," I said quickly, before he might change his mind. Tom got up from the bed where he was sitting. I watched him walk to my chair, remove the belt from my pants, and hang it on his chair. "And to show you that my heart is in the right place," he said, "I'm not going to charge you anything for getting Swain to lift the silent treatment." I threw my arms around him and hugged him. "You sure are good to me," I said gratefully. "It's what brothers are for," Tom said. "Good night, J.D." It was worth the belt just to have him talk to me and say good night to me. Before going to sleep that night, I included Tom in my prayers and thanked God for giving me such a big-hearted and wonderful brother. It's the end of chapter 2.